consulting sessions to help catalyze change projects with tailored services based on our clients' specific needs. Leslie's interests and expertise include change management, staff development, organizational support, career and leadership development, research, and coaching. Leslie also has a background in library services, having worked in several different types of libraries over the years, including the Washington State Library. Well, thank you very much, Leslie, for being willing to do this. And just before I turn over the mic to you, do you wish me to interrupt you gently as questions come in, or would you prefer to have me collect them and then feed them to you at the end of the presentation?
I think let's do as we go along. And see how much
All
that
right,
interrupts.
then I will. Okay, I will do that, and I will just gently say I have a question. So, and I see people are already typing in. One person has read ahead, but in the meantime, I will turn the mic over to Leslie. And thank you very much. Is there a way we can see chat? You should be able to see chat, people. If you can't, please get in touch with Joe. Because, yes, everyone should be able to see chat. Okay, Leslie, the microphone is all yours.
Thank you, Carolyn, for the introduction, and I would like to thank the Washington State Library for giving me the opportunity to present this webinar, and I'd like to thank everyone joining us today. Let's see. So I see that some people are already answering the question, but I'm just curious what about the topic of introvert and extrovert communication interests you? So I put that pretty early here. Let's see.
So I'll read some. Interested in developing staff workshops and leading meetings where both introvert and extroverts feel comfortable. One person says, strong introverts here, communicating with other human beings. Ways to avoid miscommunication and clarity, communicating effectively with opposites, networking across communication styles, communication improvements. So those things seem to be what folks are interested in. Creating more effective teams, how to balance the needs of extroverts and introverts in group projects. So those are some things. Here's another one. Strong introvert her, interested in highlighting the value of introverts in a culture that values extroverts. And so I see some common themes there. How to make sure
yeah, there's a lot of good stuff there.
Yeah. So you've got...
Okay, well, hopefully...
Go for it.
I was going to say, hopefully I can address most of these. A lot more came in than I was expecting. But a lot of those will be addressed, and anything that people are interested about that I don't get to in the webinar, here's my contact information, and it will also appear later. So I'm happy to answer questions too. Okay, so all of us have experienced times at work, at home, or in social settings where we don't understand someone else, or they don't understand us. At best, these misunderstandings are perplexing, and at worst, they lead to tense and hostile interactions. When we don't understand someone, they have become the perplexing other. Because we can't know what's going on in the other person's head, we fill in the blanks of our knowledge with stories and assumptions. And this is where things start to get messy and can snowball until we are left with hurt feelings, resentment, anger, and closed communications. Collisions between perplexing others can be positive, though, leading to innovative, fresh ideas that neither party would have produced on their own. Or these collisions can be negative, leading to the hurt feelings, resentment, and closed opportunities for collaboration. Everyone loses in that scenario. The people involved in the collision, the libraries they work for, and the customers. And as libraries are facing, unstable, shrinking, or static budgets, greater demand for services, demand for a greater variety of services, and rapid changes in technology, these challenges are going to require people to work with the perplexing other. And to do this, you'll need to understand them better. So why is it so difficult to understand other people sometimes? I saw this meme floating around the internet, and I thought it was very appropriate. Trying to understand the behavior of some people is like trying to smell the color 9. And when it comes to introvert-extrovert communication, this seems to pop up a lot when I talk to people. They're just very perplexed about what's going on with the other person. Here's some of the things that I hope you take away from this webinar. I hope you get a better understanding of the perplexing other, an appreciation of what the other brings to the table, and some ideas of how to prevent and resolve small misunderstandings so that they don't become destructive misunderstandings. All right, so first I'd like to caution everyone that these terms and definitions are not meant to box anyone in. People are complex, and it's important to get to know individuals for who they are instead of assuming everyone in a particular category wants the same things, thinks and behaves the same way, or even behaves the same way every day. And as you can see on this slide, it's really a spectrum. It's, there's not discrete categories. And so before we go too much further, I'd like to explain what I mean when I say introvert and extrovert. And you can see that I've spelled extrovert with an A, extroversion with an A. This is the original spelling that I use, but both versions are considered correct. So if you see extrovert versus extrovert, they're both correct. Per the vast majority of psychologists, the main differences are that introverts tend to recharge their metaphorical batteries with more solitary, low-key, low-stimulation, sensory stimulation environments and activities. And extroverts tend to recharge their metaphorical batteries with more higher stimulation, sensory stimulation, and social activities. And furthermore, introverts process their thoughts and emotions internally for the most part, and extroverts do their processing externally, which explains some of the communication differences right away. Let's see. As another point of distinction, I'd also like to mention that not all introverts are shy, and not all extroverts are socially confident and assertive. Shyness is a social anxiety. I think Susan Cain's explanation of shyness is helpful because it captures the concept well. Shyness is the fear of social disapproval or humiliation. Therefore, shyness is inherently painful. On the other hand, being an introvert is not inherently painful. So that leads us to 4, combinations of ways of combining that, where you can be an introvert and shy or socially anxious, but you could also be an extroverted and socially anxious person. And this often makes the extrovert appear to be an introvert because behaviorally we observe similar things. They will be quiet and not necessarily engaging as much as you would expect an extrovert to engage. And so it's easy to misunderstand what you're looking at just from that. So then there's, extroverts that are socially confident and assertive, and introverts that are socially confident and assertive. So they may be a little more talkative and behave in ways that we associate more with extroverts because we have this confusion about the differences between introverts and extroverts versus shyness and social confidence, and they're not the same thing. So that just complicates this all a little bit more. Many of you have already known about those distinctions and defining characteristics of introverts and extroverts. However, something you may not have heard about is ambiversion. Ambiverts are pretty equally balanced between introversion and extroversion, much like someone who is ambidextrous can write and do tasks equally well or nearly equally well with both hands. Susan Cain says she thinks ambiverts have the best of both worlds. Although I agree that is probably true for the most part, I would say that any strength or gift has a corresponding weakness or challenge. And in the case of ambiversion, ambiverts may have a hard time understanding why introverts and extroverts are not quite as nimble at switching from one mode to the other. Thus, although they have a great gift of being able to be nimble, they may have misunderstandings with people and not knowing why other people can't do that too. Okay, so based on those definitions, we have a poll, and I believe that it's set up to actually give you the options of A, B, C, D. So if you could answer what you would say you are based on that information, that would be great. To give you a moment.
If you can use the polling option in the participants panel, it will automatically tally the results. We can post those onto the screen. I'll highlight where those are located after those are listed earlier. The polling responses are right here with this. It shows a check mark in this picture, but right now it's A to D that's available for you.
Okay, I would say that I think we've got everyone who's going to do it has done it. So there are your results on the top of the chat panel.
All right. I don't. Jeremy, can you? There we go. I couldn't remember how you showed me to do that. Thanks. Okay, so it looks like we have quite a number of introverts and also quite a number of I don't know or none options. Oh no, sorry, those are the people that didn't respond. So yeah, it looks like mostly introverts in here, but also some ambiverts and some extroverts. And this is a sampling of what you may experience in your workplace. But of course, I mean, this is kind of a hodgepodge of people coming together from different areas based on a particular interest. I have been reading different sources saying different percentages of these. So one that I read recently is that ambiverts make up 50% and introverts and extroverts are 25 each. But I've also read that it's more of an equal distribution. So I don't think that there's actually a good solid number of this is what we are out there. However, it's a spectrum, so they're not really discrete categories anyway, so it's pretty difficult to actually do that, to figure out, how many of each category there is. But this is, how people are seeing themselves, so this is good information. All right, so let's turn to my favorite model for explaining misunderstandings. This is Jhanelle Wallens' Interpersonal Gap Model, as interpreted by me. We will use this model as a framework for discussing communications between introverts and extroverts, and potentially even ambiverts, although I'm using the ends of the spectrum to make it a little clearer about the differences. So check out person A on the left here. In the thought bubble is person A's thoughts and intentions, which are invisible to person B. And now check out person B, and the thought bubble on the right side is person B's thoughts and interpretations, which are invisible to person A. And there in the middle is the observable behavior of person A. If the arrows were going the other way, then we would be talking about observable behavior of person B. Between the private thoughts of each person and the observable behavior is a dashed line for each person. This represents their filters. Filters are weaved over time with threads from a person's various life experiences. Things that might influence the weave of the filter are, the family you were born to, culture, subcultures, your age and your year of birth, because when you were born makes a difference too, gender, temperament, etc. It's a complex tapestry that affects how we make sense of the world around us, including interpersonal communication. Yet most of the time, we don't even realize the filters are there. To add a layer of complexity, the filter does not just affect how we interpret incoming information, it also affects outgoing information. That is, the filter affects how we transform our intentions into observable behaviors and how we communicate our private thoughts and feelings. We can apply the interpersonal gap model to any number of examples of miscommunications between introverts and extroverts. So we'll show you one example, and then we can potentially look at more later. The example is of an introvert being quiet and still. That's the observable behavior. So what is the introvert trying to communicate, and how is the extrovert interpreting it? So person A is our introvert. Observable behavior, as I said, is that they're quiet and still. On the left, we see the introvert's thoughts. They're basically hoping to share an idea and waiting for an empty space in the conversation to do so. And the introvert feels that the extrovert needs to stop talking in order to provide space for the introvert's ideas. On the right, we see the extrovert's thoughts. The extrovert is trying to make sure there's not an uncomfortable silence in the conversation, so that's why they're still talking. And is expecting the introvert to speak up, interrupt if he or she has an idea. Since person A is not speaking up, person B assumes that person A has nothing to contribute, which is obviously not the case. So it's easy to see how this observable behavior means completely different things to the two people on either side of the conversation, and how what one person intends is not getting across to the other person. Sometimes these get into really tense and hostile interactions, and they snowball. As you see in the picture, all of these people are working towards making this snowball, whether they realize it or not. So, for example, I have heard from people that they're frustrated that they're getting interrupted, or their sentences are getting finished for them, and they feel it's very disrespectful, and they're getting really frustrated about it. I had a friend tell me about this and how it was happening in so many different conversations for her, and that's actually why I started looking into this a little more and trying to help people to step back from what they're experiencing and kind of try to look at it a little more broadly and see what's going on from the other side, because we make these assumptions about what it means. And she was feeling disrespected, and the person on the other side had not intended that. I've also seen some interesting misunderstandings where, for instance, I knew an extrovert who needed to get up and walk around and chat with people and kind of get his juices flowing, and he would do this at work and would go over to the water cooler and maybe chat with whoever was there, and this helped him to kind of get going, get his creative juices flowing, and helped to stimulate him a little bit more, because he was in such a low stimulation environment. It wasn't working for him as an extrovert. He needed more stimulation to be able to actually get his work done. But other people were interpreting it differently than what was going on for him and what his intention was. And they were seeing him as, goofing off and not really getting anything done. And it was because their need for stimulation was much lower, and so they were not able to understand that. Another example that I collected recently from a friend was she was telling me about an event that she put on with a group of other people, and how, you know, they put all this work into it and it was so exciting, and they put together this great program. And then at the end, when she wanted to chat about, you know, what went well and, you know, what didn't go so well, and celebrate and bond with their teammates a little more, some of them disappeared because they were introverts and needed the downtime after, you know, playing extroverts basically for so long and getting exhausted by it. But she had misinterpreted what that meant. She had been seeing them more as extroverts because that's what they had appeared to be based on, you know, how much output they were doing to put together this program and be sociable and do all these things that we generally attribute to extroverts. And so when they disappeared suddenly, I mean, they didn't really disappear. They had to leave. They, you know, said that they needed downtime, but it kind of shocked her, and she had to take a step back and think about it a little bit. This could have, you know, snowballed into a tense and hostile interaction. It could have become, you know, resentment of, or hurt feelings of, oh, they don't really, you know, want to talk to me. They don't really like me. They were only doing this for the project, which is possible, but it's also possible that they very much liked each other but needed some downtime. And so we read these things from our own perspective, and if we don't discuss it or we don't try to take some time to understand the other side of things, they can snowball and become really yucky situations. Sometimes people end up avoiding each other, which is not really great for workplace collaboration. Sometimes they kind of nitpick each other or say negative things to each other that's completely unrelated. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it all. Like what happens when people have bad feelings towards each other. And another point I'd like to throw out there, because I've been hearing this a lot lately too from both introverts and extroverts, both sides of this, is that sometimes people's good intentions come off as condescending. So telling an introvert to speak up, or telling an extrovert to be quiet, telling an introvert to come out of the shell, or telling the extrovert to calm down. My extroverted friend that I was talking to about this said she didn't want to quiet her passion. I mean, it was like extinguishing her flame. And so it's not always a helpful suggestion, and it's not always appropriate to the situation. There are different ways that we all come to the table, and we all bring different things. So bringing back the things that I hope you take away: a better understanding of the perplexing other, appreciation for what the other brings to the table, and some ideas for how to prevent and resolve small misunderstandings. We'll do a little bit of perspective shifting and empathy, but we've already been talking about the other and, you know, ourselves, depending on which side you're on, and looking at how misunderstandings happen and that sort of thing. My main suggestion, though, is to pause and take a step kind of outside of yourself and look at the situation from different angles. I like to say trying out different chairs around a table instead of walking in somebody else's shoes, because there's more than just that other perspective. There's all kinds of perspectives we could look at. And it's helpful, I think, to get different angles and vantage points for all of these things. At a minimum, there's, you know, looking at your perspective and trying to look at it slightly more objectively, and then also looking from the opposite perspective, and then looking from the perspective of somebody who's outside the situation, just observing and not knowing what's going on in the thought bubbles of either party. We can't know how it feels to be someone else, but we can imagine what it's like and have more compassion for the perplexing other, especially once we understand the unique gifts they bring to the table. So, having appreciation for what the other brings to the table. So here's a picture of Susan Cain, my representative introvert. And here's just, a short list of gifts from introverts. And I'm sure you can come up with others. And if you'd like to, type in the chat box, feel free about gifts that you think that come distinctly from being an introvert. So one is the ability to listen deeply and create space for other ideas. And to help people get centered, or I've heard people say that they feel more grounded when around an introvert who's calm. And they're able to share fully formulated ideas because they're doing all this processing internally, putting it all together in this, nice little package with a bow and then putting it out there. And it's, they've looked at it from so many different angles. And then they provide a safe space to discuss problems. So that's partly to do with, their tendency to go to depth with topics. And so instead of saying at the very surface level, but there's a safety in being able to discuss issues that you might not be able to discuss with other people. If you're an introvert and somebody said to you, wow, I've never told anyone this but you, that's what that is. Okay, so extroverts. This is Tony Robbins. You may have heard of him. Every time I talk about him, people will say, oh, is he the guy with the fire walking thing? Yeah, that's him. So extroverts bring enthusiasm and passion, a surplus of ideas, just tons of them, and a boldness, and they often help lighten a situation that might be getting a little too heavy. And ambiverts, we'll bring them back in. This guy, his name is Adam Grant, and he's a professor, researcher, wrote the book Give and Take, but he's also, doing some research on ambiversion, and he is he's either a social introvert or an ambivert. So the gifts that ambiverts have are that they're able to nimbly shift between both worlds, and they're able to use the best qualities of both introverts and extroverts. So the combination of listening carefully and knowing when to, be exuberant. And they're able to bring balance, and hopefully, in a group setting, able to help balance the differences if there are people at the extremes of the spectrum, and help bring, people together to make those work together better because they do it within themselves. Okay, so resolving misunderstandings before they get out of hand. Primarily, it's, you're in the middle of a communication with somebody and something's going on and you're not quite understanding them, or they're not understanding you. You kind of have to bring it up to a meta-dialogue level, so you're talking about the conversation. And also, what's going on for you and them in that conversational moment. So these are kind of my twists on things that come from the Interpersonal Gap Model by John Wallens that I introduced earlier. You really only have control over your own behavior and only know your own thoughts and feelings. So to work towards resolving misunderstandings, you have to start with yourself. This is really the most important step and in moving forward, and sometimes the most difficult. So your filters, like looking at your filters and having insight about what filters you actually have there, because we walk through life not really noticing that they're there. This is, exploring your values. Like, why is it that this friend of mine felt disrespected when she was being interrupted? Well, she has a strong value on not interrupting someone during a conversation. She sees this as a sign of respect, and so for her it's a very important value, but for the other person, it wasn't even part of their value makeup. And so that's part of where some of the miscommunications come in, is just kind of different perspectives, different values, and different ways of looking at those things. Also looking at how your experiences shape your filters and historical patterns. I know that the more this particular friend was getting interrupted over time, the more frustrating it got for her. So by the time she was talking to the last person, she was getting more frustrated with them than would be warranted normally, because they didn't know the whole history of her, being interrupted. This one conversation was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back sort of situation, and she got very frustrated. And another thing that's going to affect your filters is the driving forces, and also whether you're an introvert or extrovert or ambivert, how those things influence how you interpret everything. So being aware of all that can help you to step outside it a little bit and see, how there might be a miscommunication, and you might be able to close that gap a little bit. So the first step that Wallens suggests is to share impact as his language for it. And so I would say that, when you're looking at these filters, you need to pay attention to how you're feeling in response to what someone does or says. So, if you're the introvert and you've been interrupted and you're frustrated, describe your experience by saying, hey, look, I'm a little frustrated that I keep getting interrupted here. And I'm wondering if, you're intending to frustrate me, or if you're intending to interrupt me, or if this is, something that's just kind of coming automatically for you, and being able to ask those questions and describe what's going on for you. We'll open up the dialogue so that you can figure out what's going on both sides of the interpersonal gap, because you don't know what's going on in the thought bubble of the other person. The other part is also taking responsibility for the impact you have on the other person. So you know your intentions, but you can observe your conversation partner's reactions and check whether your intentions come across accurately. And if it looks like they haven't, then it's appropriate to acknowledge any negative impact you may have had and to clarify what intentions you had. This isn't to say that you're responsible for how other people choose to feel, but it is to say that you're responsible for clearing up, the gap between your intention and how they took it, to the extent that you clarify your intention. And their experience, they're responsible for their experience and how they feel, and you're responsible for your experience and how you feel. And that's one of my favorite parts of Interpersonal Gap Model, is that it creates a very clear delineation of where your responsibility ends and theirs begins, and you're not responsible for how they choose to feel, and they're not responsible for how you've chosen to react to a particular situation. So if you're the extrovert and you're being very boisterous and you're talking to somebody and they look like they're kind of shrinking and backing away, it might be appropriate to look at, okay, so is my intention coming across accurately here? Like, is this really what I'm intending to do? And that's kind of just being able to look at okay, so here's what I intend, and here's what's happening. Here's the reaction I'm getting. How do I make the gap smaller between my intention and the impact? And then for maintenance is practice. Preventing misunderstandings requires, vigilance at first until new habits are formed. Being able to watch for warning signs that a misunderstanding is starting. Communicate as clearly as possible and check, that your intent actually is what's coming across, and verify impact and describing your own impact of how things are landing on you, how you're experiencing what's happening in the situation. So my conclusion is that many amazing solutions, innovations, and achievements can come from the collision of ideas, gifts, and ways of being that introverts, extroverts, and ambiverts bring to the table. Improving communications is a big step toward better collaborations at work, at home, and everywhere else. And really, work is so much more enjoyable when communication goes smoothly. Oh, great. And I have, if I can figure out how to put it on your file.
You have a PDF or something here.
This one. Okay, so I have a references and resources document, and I just did file transfer. So hopefully that works out for you. If not, let me know and I can send it to you separately. And here's my contact information, my website. You can check me out, ask me questions whenever. And it's really the extent of my content if we want to look at questions or other things people wanted to talk about.
Thanks, Leslie. And I think we will open the floor now. If you have a headset, you can go ahead and raise your hand, and I will call on you. Or if you want to type a question in chat for Lori, not Lori, excuse me, Leslie. I'm reading the email chat here, wrong one. So if you want to do that, please do so. That'll be great, and we have another 15 minutes or so that we can entertain questions if you are. I think it was a very thorough presentation, a good reminder as we head into lots of holiday parties and situations where we're going to be together with folks, and it's a good idea, a reminder of what we should do in these things. So I'm waiting. I don't see anyone typing, but if you can do that. Let's see. We have thank you for using some of the points you covered. Okay, could we please put up the maintenance slide again? So Jeremy, can you flip back through to that slide? Maybe let's see here. There, is that one it? I flipped through to it. Okay, and then, so we have that slide up, and Judy asked the question, how do I enter a conversation politely with a bunch of talkative extroverts?
Oh, my headset was up. Sorry, I think Judy's question was, how does an introvert enter a conversation politely with a bunch of talkative extroverts?
Leslie.
Well, I would say that just walk up to the conversation and kind of move your way in slowly or quickly if you like. Oftentimes people will acknowledge your presence. If they don't, wait for something that they've said that you can kind of ping off of. If they're kind of going back and forth really quickly, then it sounds difficult, but it's easier to get in there without being rude because they're all kind of throwing it out there. If you have one person who's talking a lot over period of time, it's a little harder to jump in, I think, without being rude. So that would be my suggestion, is just kind of throw in an idea that goes off of something else that somebody else is saying. But you can stand there and observe for a little bit, because that's often more comfortable for us introverts.
It looks like Sergey is typing a question, so we'll wait for his thing to come through. Sometimes we forget that things. Oh, she says thanks. Thanks, Leslie. So, and other people have said thank you for. They said, Marilyn commented, I like the inclusion of information on ambiverts. Wasn't familiar with that category. That was a new one for me as well, and I think it's a good one to know.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Corey comments, the distinction between introversion and social anxiety is important. Social anxiety makes communication difficult. Yes, for
yes,
both sides of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as an extrovert myself, I'll still get social anxiety sometimes. It's just how it goes. But being in large groups of people, people I know I don't have that anxiety, obviously, and that's just what keeps me going. I've known Leslie for a while, so she already understands that about me. But seeing the diagram and having the two axes there on the same page kind of highlighted that for me.
Okay, well, I'm not seeing anybody typing any questions. Anyone wish to just click on the talk button and make a comment? Oh, I see some folks typing. I do. Here they come. We have some thank yous. And so we'll see what they come through and say.
Have some applause
Okay.
from Susan down at the bottom.
Yes. And then we also say, Judy has asked the question, are we going to get a copy of this PowerPoint? Jeremy, that's your question to answer.
Well, the archive, of course, is available, or will be available very, very shortly. I have the website ready to go up as soon as everyone is out of the room and the archives cleared. As for the slides themselves, that would have to be up to Leslie. She uses some fonts in this slide that weren't working on my computer earlier. We were testing this a little bit previously. So there is a way for Leslie to save this as a PDF, and that would be able to give that out to folks. Leslie, just that you can go in File, Save As, and convert to a PDF there, or export, I think it is. And then, of course, if you export it, then just use load content. It will send it out as a PDF for anybody that's interested.
Are you wanting me to do that now? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm just saying you could. Or, Judy, if you want to email Leslie, I'll go ahead and move it back to her contact information here. Email her. She can send it to you. If we get enough people asking for the PowerPoint slides themselves, I say let's go ahead and do it now, but that'd be up to you. Holly, we usually do not offer CE certificates. I think we can give you kind of...
we can do an attendance that you were here and present. I mean, if you want us to certify that, we could say that Holly attended today's. We could state what you did, but we couldn't. We don't give a certificate for that. Would that work for you? Attendance is great. Okay, well, Holly, I think if you would, how do we want to do that? Did you give us your email? You're going to need to put your email in chat, and that way I can send that to you. Would you put your email in chat so I can say that? Okay. I will do that. All right. Well, folks, we really appreciate any other last-minute questions. Last minute, not necessarily last minute, but last comments, questions?
I did see that somebody was not able to get the file that I attached. I'm not sure. I believe that's saved with the
Are they talking about the Word document?
Yes, I believe so.
1 second. I'll go ahead and resubmit that then. So if you've already downloaded it, this is the file that was already sent out. Go ahead and just hit no. Carolyn, there's another person asking for a certificate of attendance.
Okay, I don't see. John Paul, certainly. We will do that.
Okay, and I would just like to add that if anybody wants to get into the other topics of, teamwork and those sorts of things, feel free to email me, and I can send you more information later about that. The other topics that people brought up that they were interested in that weren't quite covered in the webinar.
Okay. Well, any other questions? Thank you again, Leslie, for sharing. I think this was a topic of great interest to lots of folks. And I think in libraries we have an interesting, it's a place that that we can have lots of misunderstandings because we have obviously sometimes a 50-50 mix of introverts and extroverts. I think it's a good topic for libraries especially. So okay, John Paul, I'll get there. I just haven't typed it yet. So okay. Again, thank you. And last call for questions or typed comments in chat. I see someone typing. Thank you. That's
Thank
good.
you. Yeah, this was great. Thank you for the opportunity to present.
We appreciate your willingness to do so. All right, well, we'll be back again in January with another topic, and if you are on our First Tuesdays list, you will automatically get notified of it. And we also post to several state library resource pages, so we look forward to possibly having you join us again. So thanks again. Thank you to our speaker. We very much appreciate her willingness to share with us. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Leslie.